My name is Tom Glacken. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing with VALOGIX, and today I'm going to be talking about how advanced inventory planning for Sage 100 is helping organizations find cash that's hidden in their warehouse. And basically what I'm going to do today, I'm going to provide a brief background about VALOGIX, but talk a little bit about why consider automated inventory planning now, in these very uncertain economic times. Why should you make an investment in the business at this point? I'll also be touching on VALOGIX's unique approach to inventory planning and optimization. I'll then follow that with a brief demonstration of the software and wrap the session up with a review of a real customer success story, and then we'll open this up to any questions that anyone on today's session may have. Very briefly about VALOGIX, our founders have been specializing in advanced inventory planning and optimization since 1988, and that is all we do. So we have a laser-sharp focus on providing powerful planning solutions that are easy to use, and we always balance that ease of use with when we're considering adding new functionality to the product. Our entire senior team have all been inventory planners and managers at some points in their very long careers. So we understand a lot of challenges that the organizations may be facing in this area. We have been a strategic partner with Sage since 2003. So we have a broad representation in the Sage marketplace. We are a global organization. We have customers and partners in 42 countries, and we're continuing to grow. But having said that about our background, there's been one thing that's been consistent with our solutions over the years, and that's the ability to help organizations gain a unique competitive advantage and receive a powerful return on their investment in the inventory planning solution. And essentially what we do at a very high level is we help organizations improve their cash flow. And I know that may be a bold statement. You may hear that frequently from software solution providers, but hopefully by the end of today's brief session you'll have a sense of how automated inventory planning for Sage 100 may enable you to not only save a significant amount of time, but also perhaps optimize the investment that you make in your inventory. So why consider inventory planning? Why consider making a change in these uncertain economic times? The good news is that recently many economic indicators are positive, but the reality is that as a result of the business challenges over the last several years, our customers have become more demanding than ever. They're looking to get the best rates. They want to ensure that they're getting great prices and the products are delivered on time. If not, it's possible to lose them. If we look at the economic growth, it has been fairly steady for the last couple of quarters, but it's actually averaged less than 2.25% since the recovery began, and that's a long way from the traditional growth that we're experiencing. If you add to that the fact that the federal budget debates are continuing to drive uncertainty, the bottom line is that the entire business marketplace is very uncertain at this point. And we also find that business managers are continuing to look for options to improve efficiencies. So what if you could free up your resources by significantly reducing the time required to perform inventory planning, or by using automated tools, help uncover excess inventory that may be sitting in your warehouses, free that up, turn that into cash so you can use that for funding other projects? What if you could very easily identify where your inventory is at risk of being surplus, or the other side of being obsolete, and act on it today? Take action. In addition to perhaps increasing the sales by having a better mix of inventory available. So the bottom line is, what if you could be ready for the changes in the customer's demand, regardless of which way the economic indicators drive us? And that's essentially what VALOGIX is helping organizations do by managing a very tough balancing act. The automated inventory planning can help organizations keep their inventory costs as low as possible while enabling them to meet their customers' demands at a desired service level. If we stop and take a look at some of the challenges that many organizations are facing today, without the proper tools. They often end up using manually intensive spreadsheets to set min, max, or safety stock values. The use of those spreadsheets can make it very difficult, if not impossible, to recognize and react quickly to variability in demand, or make it extremely challenging to manage the continual growth of new SKUs. If you add on top of that the complexities that are involved with importing items that have very long lead times, inventory planning and having the appropriate amount of inventory available when needed becomes crucially important, because expediting for products that have, coming in from overseas can be a very costly proposition, and if planning isn't done properly, you may result in stockouts that could result in lost customer sales, or the other side of that coin could be very low inventory turns with excess and inventory and obsolete inventory sitting in the warehouse. So these are all challenges that many organizations are facing today, and the automated inventory planning that VALOGIX provides for Sage 100 helps organizations manage those challenges. And I do want to emphasize the word help, because the software itself cannot replace the unique knowledge that users have about their business and their customers. But what the software does do is provide some very powerful information, brings it to your fingertips, and makes it easy to make informed decisions and focus, more importantly, focus on managing exceptions. The software begins by automatically creating a forecast for every item at every location. It's using multiple forecasting techniques and automatically picking the best fit. And while the forecast is a great starting point, the real power of the solution comes in the next step, and that's the optimization stage. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. You'll see in just a couple minutes when I get into the software, it really has been designed to be very easy to use and let the user focus on managing exceptions. The software is also true multi-echelon planning, has true multi-echelon planning capabilities, which means you can plan to bring items into a master warehouse or a distribution center that's supporting branch locations, or perhaps even 3PL, third-party logistics providers. Or even in many cases today, many larger customers require vendors to provide them with vendor-managed inventory or consignment inventory. So the application can be configured to help you manage every level in your network. So I mentioned that the inventory forecasting is a great place to start, and it is an important aspect of the business. But the challenge with the forecast alone is that it really is that. It's a forecast, it's an estimate, it's rarely ever perfect. So the challenge then becomes, how do you translate that forecast into inventory, the amount of inventory that you should be carrying? And on this chart, we provide two very distinctly different examples of items with historical demand. We're looking at both items. We're looking at 12 months of historical demand. The item on the left has very random demand. Some months very high demand, other months very low. One of the many challenges with an item like this, or demand patterns like this, is the forecast is a great starting point. And here, there is enough data for the application to automatically create the forecast that you see here, and also recognize that an upward trend is occurring. But the challenge with the forecast alone is it won't necessarily ensure you can meet this next unexpected peak in demand, should you decide to do so, and that in itself is a business decision that needs to be made that the application can help. But assuming you do want to be able to meet the next unexpected peak in demand, the application begins by considering an item's lead time. In this example, for ease of illustration, it's 15 days. It also enables the user to determine how frequently you'd ideally like to place replenishment orders to the supplier. And in this example, again, it's twice a month or every 15 days. So the combination of the lead time and the order frequency create the planning horizon. The application continually looks at the forecast over the planning horizon, as well as other factors, but the forecast is most important. It also enables the user to set a desired service level, meaning what percentage of time do you want to be able to meet demand with inventory that's sitting in your warehouse. And this is an important item, so it's been set relatively high here. And using all that information, the application will automatically set a stocking quantity. And this represents the amount of inventory that should be either on hand or on order to safely meet the upcoming demand. In this example, it's 158. That includes 110 for the forecast, plus an additional 48 in safety stock to ensure that we can meet the demand because this item has so much variability and we're targeting a very high service level. Now, if we take a look at the second example, here we have a much more predictable demand pattern resulting in the exact same forecast. If we use all the same planning parameters, the net result here is a stocking quantity of 119 instead of 158 as illustrated in the first example. And the difference is much less safety stock is required to achieve the same desired 99% service level. And part of what enables the application to do that is it is doing some very powerful statistics behind the scenes, and part of that is an exchange curve analysis. So if you remember statistics in the bell curve, the application is creating that bell curve and it's going out on the tail of the curve depending on where the confidence level or the service level is set. Obviously, the higher you set that service level, the greater amount of safety stock that will be required to achieve that service level. One of the nice things about the software is you do not have to be a mathematician to have this work for you. The application is doing this behind the scenes and presenting it in a very easy-to-use format. In fact, you can actually open this exchange curve in the product live and run what-if scenarios. You can drag the service level along the exchange curve and see what impact that has on the stocking quantity. One final slide before getting into the software, just to give you an illustration of our integration with Sage, as well as an overview of the process. So this data synchronization that you see here is set up to occur automatically. So the application is automatically extracting data from Sage and updating the database. That is done seamlessly so that the user does not have to worry about duplicate data entry and things like that. Once the VALOGIX database is loaded, it analyzes up to 48 months of historical demand, looking for patterns, so it can automatically select the best fit forecasting technique. It's looking for things such as seasonality. If it is seasonal, it looks to see, is it trending up? Is it trending down? Is it trending more prominent year over year or more recently? So it's taking all those things into consideration to create the forecast. If it's not seasonal, it looks to see, is it high moving? Is it slow moving? Is it random? Again, is it trending up or down? I'm doing all that analysis and automatically picking the best fit forecasting technique and creating a forecast up to 36 months in advance. Once the forecast has been established, the application goes through that optimization process that I talked about on the two previous slides to set the stocking quantity. Once the stocking quantity has been established, it then provides some strategic visibility to show where the user may have excess and inactive stock. And it also analyzes the inventory that's currently sitting in the warehouse and provides some visibility as to how long it is anticipated to last by comparing it to the forecast. And then any items that are short, the application automatically suggests the appropriate replenishment. That can be in the form of purchase orders back to the supplier, stock transfer requests in organizations where you're using a distribution center to replenish other locations, perhaps as branch locations or retail stores. And it can also suggest the production or work orders. And all that information is presented for easy review and editing and approval, and then once approved, seamlessly creates the appropriate transactions within Sage. With that, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the software, provide a brief overview of the high-level functionality, and then wrap this up with a brief case study and any questions and answers anyone may have. You'll notice the software itself is browser-based, so all you have to do is open up your browser, point it to the appropriate bookmark, and then go ahead and log in here using your user credentials. I had mentioned during the introduction that we have spent a lot of time, effort, and money making this easy to use and designing it so that the user can focus on managing exceptions. And right on the planner's home page, you'll see it's providing you with what we consider very critical alerts. Here, these are items that have the potential to stock out within the item's lead time. Or in other words, these could be potential lost sales if the stock out situations aren't addressed. Here we can see 45 line items that have an impending stock out from forecasted demand. There's also 2 line items that have customer orders associated with them that's driving shortages. And if you want to see details behind here, you can simply click on the pie chart, takes you to the replenishment planning tab, the critical alerts. And let's focus on this sample item. This item has customer orders associated with it that are driving shortages within the lead time. And if we look a little bit deeper here, we can see that, well, the application is, throughout the application, the required quantity would represent what it's recommending you place as replenishment orders. And here you can see it's actually not even recommending a replenishment. But yet there is an issue here. And if we want to see what that issue is, we can click here and bring up this inventory flow. And the inventory flow provides a time-phased view that gives the user very quick and easy visibility to the inventory balances after considering any open demand documents, such as a sales order or unconsumed forecast. It also takes into consideration supply documents, such as open purchase orders. And if we look here, what we can see is happening is this sales order, number 192, is what's creating the issue. They're ordering a quantity of 500, and there's only 483 available, and that's the plan as for March 15th. So we have a sales order of 500 due on March 15th, and we're not going to have enough to fulfill that. Although there's a sales order, another sales order due on March 18th. That's creating even a more severe situation here. But on the same view, you can actually see on March 19th, there's a purchase order that's due in for a quantity of 500 that's going to more than meet that demand, as well as take care of the upcoming forecast. So while there is no replenishment required here, the tool is providing you with visibility that can let you make informed decisions. Perhaps you call these two customers and inform them that you won't be able to fulfill the full amount, or perhaps contact the supplier and see if that order could be, the purchase order could be delivered sooner. So that's just one simple example of how the tool can really help you focus on managing exceptions. We'll come back to this tactical view in just a couple minutes, but what I'd like to do now is take a very deep dive and go into a detailed view just to quickly explain the planning process. So I've gone into the inventory data, the item details for this sample item, and if I scroll down to the inventory data here, you can see this is where you get visibility into up to 48 months of historical demand. You can see it both numerically as well as graphically. And one of the reasons I selected this item is, if you look at it graphically, it's very easy to see that this item is very seasonal in nature. Has a peak demand in the springtime and another peak in the fall. The planning application automatically detects that seasonal pattern, selects a seasonal forecasting technique, and then automatically creates this forecast that you see down here. And you'll notice the forecast picks up the seasonal patterns as well as recent trends. So if we look at 2011, we sold about 7,000 of these. The sales were down in 2012. We only sold 5,600. The application automatically detects that downward trend and builds that into the forecast. Now, the user has full control over the forecast. You can come in here and modify the forecast if you know a special sales promotion is occurring, or perhaps bringing on a large customer, so you can modify the forecast. The user also has the ability to modify the history. Let's say you had did run a special promotion that was successful, and now you want to remove that from the history so that it doesn't account for that promotion moving forward. Once the forecast has been established, the application then looks at the forecast over the planning horizon. It looks at the desired service level. Here again, it's been set relatively high, and it automatically calculates this stocking quantity. So this is that number that's recalculated for each item at each location every day. Once the stocking quantities, and that represents what you should have either on hand or on order to safely meet the upcoming demand. It then looks to see what is on hand. It looks to see what open orders are due from the suppliers within the planning horizon. If we have any past due commitments to the customer, they're classified as backordered. If we have firm commitments from the customers that exceed the forecast, the amount that exceeds the forecast would be represented here. It's doing this math to determine whether a replenishment is required or not. And in this case, a replenishment is not required. So this item will not be in the replenishment plan. While I'm on the screen now, I'd like to point out a couple of other very nice features. As mentioned, you have full control over where you set the service level. And this can be it's obviously a business decision you need to make. An obvious response will be, well, I'd love to have 100% service level. Well, to statistically meet 100%, that is impossible, but The higher you set that service level, the greater cost it's going to be to maintain that. And if you look here for this stocking quantity of 941, you can actually see a breakdown of that. It's actually costing $28,000 to maintain that. If you look just below that, you can actually see the buffer stock quantity. This requires a safety stock of 108 to be able to achieve this 99% service level. And that safety stock is costing over $3,000 alone. So this can be a very powerful tool to help you determine the optimum stock service levels and help you maintain them automatically. And by the way, before I leave this screen, you'll notice the current stocking quantity for this item is 941. And the reason for that is a 30-day lead time, and we're in the busy season. So it's ensuring that we have enough stock to be able to meet the upcoming demand. This stocking quantity for this item is going to drop off dramatically before June, so that it can ensure you can reduce the inventory during the slow months, but then also ensure enough inventory is on hand before the next expected peak in demand in September. So that's a very, very quick review of the very detailed view. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to a more tactical view. I'm the purchasing manager. I've come in. Today is Thursday. Today I want to see here, I may want to take a look at these alerts here. This sample item, this one we looked at a little bit earlier, I may or may not want to address the, these potential stockout situations. And while I wouldn't normally plan for American Computers today, since I have these items here that have the potential to stock out within the lead time, I'm going to go ahead and plan for American. So to do that, all I have to do is click on the Overview tab. And here on the Replenishment Planning Overview, you can see we use a concept called planning groups. And a planning group is a set of items that have similar characteristics for replenishment planning purposes. A very common approach to using planning groups is by supplier. But other organizations might want to do it perhaps by warehouse or perhaps by item class or product group. You have full control over how the planning groups are set up. The objective is to enable you to very quickly come in here and perform your planning. So I'm going to select American Computers. I don't know if you noticed when I selected that, this pop-up came up, and the reason is American Computers gives us free freight if we place an order of at least $5,000. So I want to ensure that I can meet that $5,000 while I'm doing my planning. If you're a business where you're importing from overseas, you might be trying to fill shipping containers. And if you are, you can get that visibility here as well. It enables you to track weight or the cube information. So if those are the constraints you want to target, you have visibility to that as well. I'm going to go ahead and review this particular supplier. And you'll see here when I first come in, it's recommending a total replenishment cost of about $73,000. If I look down at the detail a little bit lower here, I can see this is covering multiple warehouses, both the East Coast and the West Coast. Today, I'd like to just focus on the East Coast. So I'm going to quickly drill in here, filter on the East Coast warehouse for this supplier. I can see that now I'm down to an order of $28,000 in value. I've clearly met the free freight cost, $5,000, so that I'll definitely get that free freight from the vendor. If I agreed with these quantities that the application is recommending, placing the replenishment order could be as simple as clicking here, hitting approve, and at that point it would be ready to be returned to Sage 100 to create the purchase orders. So your replenishment planning could be that quick and that easy. In reality, $28,000 is real money, and we assume that you may want to review these before making the decision. What I'd like to do is focus on this 80-minute CDR here. You'll notice that we actually, the application is recognizing we need a replenishment of 392, but it's recommending a quantity of 400. And the reason for that is this particular item has an order model with purchased in case quantities of 100. So the application automatically rounds up for that. But if I wanted to see some additional details, I can simply click here, and without leaving the planning screen, the replenishment planning screen, I can see a graphical view of the history and forecast. I can see balances that have been brought in and other data that's been brought in from Sage. One simple example of how powerful that view alone can be is if I click on this particular item, you'll notice here in September of 2012 there was an unusually high demand period. So before placing the order for that item, that quantity of 8, I may want to go review that item to see if that was a one-time event or if that's something I want to plan for moving forward. So that's just one simple example of how this graphical view can help make informed decisions. By clicking here on the required quantity, again, you can get back to that inventory flow we were looking at a little bit earlier to see all open supply, all open demand documents, as well as the impact that any unconsumed forecast is having on the stock, the ending balances. So that, again, can be a very powerful view. If you have multiple warehouses, you can very quickly drill in here and see the available quantities. You look at the net available here to see if we perhaps have available quantities at other locations. So again, bringing a wealth of information onto this screen, enabling informed decisions without leaving this. If I look at this item, I can actually see that I have 92 more than needed somewhere in my network. And in this case, for this item, even though I normally purchase in here, what I may want to do is take a look here and see where those 92 are. Here they are. They're at the West Coast warehouse. So in this case, maybe I want to do a transfer rather than a purchase. So again, many options here to optimize your investment in the inventory and very quickly make informed decisions and place your purchase orders. So that's, again, a very quick review of the tactical aspects of this. I'm going to conclude the demonstration with some strategic visibility, strategic information the application provides. On the Analytics tab, under the Investment Analysis, you get immediate visibility right here to the current value of the inventory that's been committed to. And this includes the inventory that's sitting in the warehouse as well as the value of open purchase orders to the suppliers. So in this example, they've committed to about $550,000 worth of inventory. In the next column, you can see the ideal inventory based off of the application's approach to optimizing that inventory. So in this example, there's potential to perhaps safely reduce this inventory by $33,000. Now, in actuality, there's always things that are occurring that aren't necessarily evident in the data. And in this particular example, some of the items have had the forecast adjusted to account for upcoming promotions. And here you can see, even after considering those adjustments to the forecast, the ideal inventory is actually just slightly higher than the investment that we've made. So overall, it really doesn't, a 1% difference. That really doesn't look that bad. But in reality, it is the actual challenge is much worse than that. And let me explain what I mean by that. If we look at the lower portion of the screen, so here we can see the total difference is, well, we need to purchase about $6,000 worth of inventory more than what we currently have. If I look down here, I can see this first item on the list. I've sorted this by comparing, looking at the difference in value, comparing the actual to the adjusted ideal inventory. So what this is saying, this first item on the list, we have $30,000 worth more than we need. It's significantly overinvested there. The second item, almost to $20,000 worth, $18,000 worth. So there's a significant amount of inventory where there's overinvested. And if we look at the other side of that, if I flip this over, at the same time, we have many items that require replenishments. Those would be the items that were in that replenishment plan we were looking at just a minute ago. So while the initial view of this inventory looks like, well, we're in great shape, there's only 1% difference, in reality, the actual differences are significantly greater. We've overstocked certain items, understocked other items. So this can be a very powerful tool to give you that strategic visibility. Another strategic view into the inventory is what we refer to as the forward aging. And here you can get immediate visibility to, well, actually, on this screen, this is not your traditional inventory aging. This is not telling you how long the products have been sitting on your shelf. What this is doing is looking at what is currently sitting on the shelf, what the current on-hand inventory, comparing it to the forecast for a selected period of time. This is currently set to look forward 6 months. And then it's doing an analysis of the current $162,000 worth of inventory that's sitting in the warehouse. $34,000 worth of that is forecasted to be sold over the next 6 months. That's active. Of those same items, there's over $33,000 worth more than we need for the next 6 months. That's excess. That would be great candidates for special promotions. I don't know many businesses that want to have 6 months of inventory tied up or over 6 months of inventory sitting on their shelf. And here we can see there's $95,000 worth that hasn't any demand for at least a year. That's inactive. So again, sorting this by excess inventory value, what I can see here is very quickly see this first item on the list, we have $22,000 worth of inventory, more than we need for the next 6 months. That would be an excellent candidate to create a special sales promotion or some other event to try to turn some of that into cash. So we started this webinar talking about how you may be able to free up cash that's sitting in your warehouse. And this optimization process and these tools are what enables users to do that. And we have many, many case studies documenting that. So what I'm going to do right now is kind of wrap this presentation up with a review of one of those case studies. If I come back into this view, and so here's an example of the areas where we see value, measurable value, that have been delivered to our customers. And this is typical of what we see within the first year of using the solution. And I'm going to start here in the middle, because this area, this reduction in planning time, is actually what many of our customers tell us that savings alone was provided a return on the investment. The time they saved more than paid for the solution. And we typically see reductions between 60 to 80, 85%, and often maybe even 90%. So what would that mean in your organization if you consider how much time you're spending today, if you could reduce that by 80 to 90%? What could the extra time that person or people who are planning your inventory today, what could you do with that extra time? That can be very powerful return, putting that time to other value-added activities for the organization. Now, on top of the time savings, many of our customers are able to reduce their inventory by up to 20% within the first year, and often take it to even higher levels after multiple years. So very significant reductions in inventory, at the same time reducing stock-out situations, enabling organizations to increase sales. And I'll finish this with just one final real-life example. Here's a customer that we did a case study just 3 months after going live with VALOGIX. They had already reduced their inventory by 12%. The person who was doing their planning was spending 2 full days a week prior to using VALOGIX. That went to 2 hours a week. So he got almost 2 full days a week back to do other activities for the business. They were actually having, prior to VALOGIX, they were having severe backorder situations. Once they implemented VALOGIX, they had a 10% increase in sales that they attributed directly to better inventory availability. So they received a return on their investment in less than 3 months. We did a follow-up with them at 1 year later. At that point, they had reduced their inventory by 20%. They still had that 10% increase in revenue. Their back orders were down by 70%, and they were able to remove 60% of their inactive and dead stock. And one thing that was a surprise to them, the fact that they now had a forecast that they could depend upon, and the fact that their purchasing manager had freed up almost 2 full days a week, he was able to sit down with his suppliers and negotiate volume agreements with them for the year that resulted in an across-the-board, on average, savings of 3%. So that was an incredibly powerful benefit that was a complete surprise to them. So they noted, again, even with all that real savings that they got, the time savings alone was what they considered to be providing them a return on investment.